As the world deals with the unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic, as positive cases pile up and death tolls continue to rise, as societies across the world walk towards a less predictable and more dangerous future, people seek reassurance, stability, and protection at all costs. And for governments, it is time to prove their mettle. As with every crisis, it is time when leaders emerge. Some convey strength, some get emotional, some are supportive, and some seem opportunistic. As countries turn inward, the world seems to be in disarray as how to fight the virus. Fingers are being, and rather than looking for solutions, blame is being apportioned. As the virus travels across the globe, governments and ideologies tighten their hold on people's minds, on individual fears, and on collective rights. In these times of corona, to save the citizen, governments have become more important than the governed.
At a time when collaborative solutions which go beyond borders hold the key to defeating the deadly coronavirus, more and more governments have now begun looking inwards. Some world leaders are ignoring the advantages of international cooperation. Some are using the pandemic as an opportunity to centralize power. And then there are those who seem to be becoming more dictatorial. Here's a report.
In mid-March, when China's coronavirus caseload saw a decline and United States emerged as the new epicenter, another shift occurred, a geopolitical one. Western democracies like US and those in the European Union realized they hadn't acted early enough to stave off the spread of the virus. China in the East appeared as the seemingly responsible nation that had managed to tackle the virus. Countries which did implement curbs in time had their own set of problems, like India that saw millions rendered homeless and jobless overnight.
ध्यान से सुनिए, पूरे देश में आज रात 12 बजे से संपूर्ण देश में संपूर्ण लॉकडाउन होने जा रहा है।
Prime Minister Modi's poised demeanor and swift decision was appreciated. But as the days dragged on, the opposition questioned the Modi government's lack of planning.
जो डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेवल की मशीनरी है, वो इफेक्टिव काम कर रही है। तो मेरा एक सजेशन है कि कोविड के खिलाफ जो लड़ाई हो वो टॉप डाउन ना हो, वो बॉटम अप हो। और प्राइम मिनिस्टर जो स्टेट्स के चीफ मिनिस्टर्स हैं, जो डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स हैं, उनको एम्पावर करें। प्राइम मिनिस्टर का रोल आर्मी को एम्पावर करने का है, फोर्सेस को एम्पावर करने का है, स्टेट्स को पैसा पहुंचाने का है।
India faces an enormous challenge because it's much poorer than the United States or Germany or Japan. It doesn't have the same kind of resources. Its healthcare system is not in the same situation. It's an enormous challenge.
In the US, President Donald Trump lashed out at China and leveled blame on the World Health Organization for not prepping the world for the virus onslaught.
They've been wrong about a lot of things, and they had a lot of information early, and they didn't want to. They seem to be very China-centric. They missed the call. The WHO's attack on travel restrictions put political correctness above life-saving measures. The WHO failed in this basic duty and must be held accountable.
Donald Trump even invoked a new name for the coronavirus, the Chinese virus. Had US not been fighting off the novel virus, 2020 would have seen Trump campaign hard for a re-election. Some say with branding SARS-CoV-2 as the Chinese virus, shutting down immigration in the wake of the pandemic and cutting off USA's donations to the WHO, Trump might still be playing to his core voter base. Over the course of the pandemic, Trump has branded himself as the one-stop solution for the country. Be it suggesting hydroxychloroquine as a game-changer drug, a claim that medical experts vehemently denied, to this.
So, supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light, and I think you said that hasn't been checked, but you're going to test it. And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or in some other way.
Across the world, in China, Trump's nemesis, President Xi, showcased triumphalism and retorted to jingoism to display how his country overcame the pandemic, despite China revisiting its COVID-19 death toll recently, and there being fears of a second wave of infections hitting the country. Over in Europe, it was as early as 30th of March that Prime Minister Viktor Orban of Hungary put the fear of the virus to secure the right to rule by decree.
De ezt a válságot önök nélkül is meg fogjuk oldani. Ha most nem szavazzák meg, akkor is meg fogjuk oldani. Minél inkább lassítani tudjuk a terjedést, a baj, amiben leszünk, az egyre hosszabb lesz. És az nem 3 hónap lesz, kedves barátaim. Tehát mindenkit arra szeretnék kérni, hogy nekem ne adjon, és a kormánynak se adjon fölhatalmazást 3 hónapra. Ezzel a munkával megbíztak, veszélyhelyzetben vagyunk, fogadják el ezt a törvényt, és utána, ha a törvényt elfogadták, bármelyik nap visszavehetik a kormánytól azokat a jogokat, amelyeket egyébként a válság kezelése érdekében gyakorlunk. Vissza akarjuk adni önöknek.
But because it contains no time frame, the legislation has triggered criticism from opposition parties as well as human rights groups, because it makes Prime Minister Orban a virtual dictator.
Mindehhez az intézkedésekhez önök most és ön személyesen egy olyan felhatalmazást kér, egy olyan időkorlát nélküli felhatalmazást, amire egész Európában nincsen példa.
Despite the opposition, on April 9th, Hungary decided to prolong the nationwide lockdown indefinitely. In Russia, because of the coronavirus concerns, President Vladimir Putin postponed a referendum vote on a constitutional change that theoretically allows him to stay in power till 2030. The public vote that was to be held on 22nd of April has now been delayed until a later date. In the meanwhile, a new law rushed through Parliament imposes tough punishments on people convicted of spreading what is deemed to be false information about coronavirus, and surveillance measures, including the use of facial recognition technology and collection of personal data, has seen expansion.
Возможностей у аналитики с помощью лица очень много на самом деле. И даже те вещи, которые еще их нету, допустим, в продукте, их в принципе можно включить. Вот. Но я думаю, что вот эти вот вещи, типа, а как вы на самом деле будете это использовать, это все-таки вопрос к ГИТУ, к Москве, вот, к официальным представителям.
Amid the coronavirus crisis in Turkey, the opposition politicians and journalists fear a new spate of censorship by President Recep Tayyip Erdogan.
We choose nationalistic isolationism, yes, we will be poorer and more miserable and even less healthy. Because to deal with epidemic, you can't deal with an epidemic just by closing your borders and stopping all flights. In the Middle Ages, there were no airplanes, there were no big passenger ships, and still epidemics like the Black Death spread within 10 years, all the way from China to India and the Middle East and Europe. The real antidote to epidemics is not isolation, it's cooperation. When you get information in time between different countries, this is how you stop epidemics in the most easy way. If you cut communication between countries, it's going to be much more difficult. to stop future epidemics.
With the novel coronavirus pandemic raging across the world, China has come under spotlight for multiple reasons. The allegation is that China tried to suppress the information of the novel coronavirus outbreak to the extent of harassing doctors and health workers who raised an alarm over COVID-19 in December. Another allegation that is coming is that China has been unwilling to share information about the behavior of the novel coronavirus and the clinical experience in handling COVID-19 cases. While China continues to deny the allegations, its role in tackling COVID-19 spread is now under the lens. Here's a look.
As the global death toll from the coronavirus continues to mount, the spotlight is on China. While governments across the globe are struggling with the fallout of the pandemic, there are some who are hardening their position towards the country. And amongst the Western countries, there is growing suspicion over the level of transparency in China's handling of the outbreak. There is a rising chorus led by the US calling for China to compensate for damages incurred due to the pandemic. A $20 trillion lawsuit has been filed against Chinese authorities in the US. A German daily has slapped China with a bill of 150 billion euros. In Australia, lawmakers have called for compensation.
We strongly believe that the Chinese Communist Party did not report the outbreak of the new coronavirus in a timely fashion to the World Health Organization. Even after the CCP did notify the WHO of the coronavirus outbreak, China didn't share all of the information it had. Instead, it covered up how dangerous the disease is. It didn't report sustained human-to-human transmission for a month until it was in every province inside of China. It censored those who tried to warn the world. It ordered a halt to testing of new samples, and it destroyed existing samples.
All this while China continues to vehemently deny the allegations.
这种所谓的控告毫无事实和法律依据，十分荒唐。新冠肺炎疫情发生以来，中国政府始终本着公开、透明、负责任的态度，及时向世卫组织以及包括美国在内的有关国家和地区通报疫情信息，分享病毒基因序列，积极回应各方关切，加强同国际社会合作。
When Wuhan was coming out of the pandemic and Italy was facing its worst nightmare and the deaths had started to mount exponentially, China had sent health workers with Wuhan experience to aid their Italian counterparts. It was China's first efforts to project a one with the world image. Now China has, in the past few weeks, escalated its efforts to send testing kits, hazmat suits and masks to countries across the world. But multiple countries have complained that Chinese masks and test kits are substandard. A number of countries have called them out as defective. From Spain to Netherlands to Turkey, Ukraine, Czech Republic, and even rumblings in the Philippines. Countries have signaled that they are discarding or returning thousands of Chinese-supplied diagnostic devices. In India too, there were multiple complaints of the kits yielding inaccurate results.
Do you really think that, India or Japan or Korea, Singapore, Australia are going to simply forgive China for the cover-up? Of course not. Now, obviously, they can bribe a few diplomats in Italy or Brazil or South Africa to be grateful for the mask diplomacy, for some medical devices, even if they don't even work. But again, the majority of mankind lives here in this Asian region. We know very well what China has done, how it's covered it up, what its ambitions are. And by the way, of course, we knew this before the virus. We didn't need this virus to know that the Chinese, Communist Party is authoritarian and self-serving and opaque. We simply now know that better than before. Now the whole world more or less knows it.
Even you people so different think looking out there when I
The US has been quite vocal against China and the WHO for their handling of the crisis. Several US states have filed lawsuits in the country against China. French President Emmanuel Macron has come out and accused Beijing of not being upfront. But the European Union's position on China has been relatively measured.
For now, you face the reality of a China on the march and America absent and a world in chaos.
At a time when each country is now fighting its own battle, a global organization like the World Health Organization is now forced into a crisis mode. When member states refuse to follow its guidance, while others stop its funding, the World Health Organization has now been accused of being too focused on China and acting too slowly to sound the alarm. Watch the special report that's coming in.
Barely a month after COVID-19 was declared a pandemic, the most powerful man on earth blamed the world's foremost health agency for its spread across the United States of America.
We're going to put a hold on money spent to the WHO. We're going to put a very powerful hold on it, and we're going to see. It's a great thing if it works, but when they call every shot wrong, that's no good.
US President Donald Trump's decision to suspend funding for the World Health Organization in the middle of the worst pandemic the world has seen sent the organization into a crisis mode.
We regret the decision of the President of the United States to order a hold in funding to the World Health Organization.
The United States of America was its biggest donor, providing over $400 million a year.
Taxpayers, our airlines are now in good shape.
But a funding crunch isn't the only crisis staring at the global organization. The WHO is also struggling to get its 194 member states to actually follow its guidance. Multiple member states have openly flouted the pandemic control guidelines or haven't implemented the recommended rules in time. In others, public spaces still remain open. The WHO has taken a serious hit on its credibility. Many have accused the organization and its current Director General of favoring the Chinese government, allegedly helping China cover up the scale of the virus contagion in the early days. Others have pointed out how WHO allegedly overlooked China's obvious misinformation in December and January. Even countries like Taiwan have hit out at the WHO. The government there claimed the health organization ignored its own early reports of human-to-human transmission and instead acknowledged China's early reports of no human-to-human transmission. Taiwan has almost successfully culled the spread of the coronavirus. Cases are low and transmission lower. The government there claims they achieved it by not following WHO guidelines.
Distancing even you people is so...
US President Trump has also launched a direct attack on WHO's Director General, alleging that Dr. Tedros was slow to communicate the magnitude of the spread because he was busy appeasing China. But as the clamor against the WHO grew, many, including the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, has said, now is not the time for a blame game.
What the world needs now is solidarity.
The world was, and the world still is grappling with its response to COVID-19. Political leaders are now fighting a game of shifting the responsibility game. People, on the other hand, are awestruck by the impact of the lockdown, social distancing, and a need for a quick fix to fight this pandemic. In the middle of all of this, a few countries have shown remarkable progress. They've been quick to respond, they've been quick to act, quick to enforce necessary measures and amongst the first few countries who are gradually opening up with new normal rules of healthy, sanitized social distancing. One thing that is going in common for all of these countries is the fact that they have all women leaders at the helm of their multi-party democratic political structure. Here's a look.
A crisis is said to be the true test of power. As the world stands neck deep in crisis, a few women in power have come to be the examples of true face of a pandemic. When the heat rose in houses of state, world leaders, mostly men, were in denial, hoping to sit this one out.
It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle. It will disappear. And from our shores, it could get worse before it gets better. It could maybe go away. We'll see what happens. Nobody really knows. The fact is, the greatest experts I've spoken to them all, nobody really knows.
I was at a hospital the other night where I think there were actually a few coronavirus patients, and I shook hands with everybody.
The ones who stepped up to the challenge were the ones who seemed to have made their country dodge a bullet. And a lot of these head of states were women. Early intervention measures controlled a pandemic. Amongst the first and the fastest response was from Taiwan. At the first sign of an illness, the president introduced 124 measures to block the spread. Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel, entered the pandemic theatre, testing and testing some more. The country's numbers are high, but far below its European neighbours, and so is Germany's mortality rate. In New Zealand, the Prime Minister took early action to shut down tourism and impose a month-long lockdown on the entire country, limiting the spread to just 9 deaths. 4 of the 5 Nordic countries are led by women. Their countries each have lower death rates from coronavirus compared to the rest of Europe. For example, Finland's Prime Minister, 34-year-old Sanna Marin, is the world's youngest leader, but she has an 85% approval rating amongst Finns for her preparedness for the pandemic. Iceland, under the leadership of its Prime Minister, is offering now free coronavirus testing. Norway, Denmark have done remarkably well under the leadership of women. Yes, other than Germany, these are small countries. Yes, these are just 7 countries of the 195 countries in the world. But also, yes, women make up just 7% of world leaders. As of 1st January 2020, there are only 10 head of states that are women in the world. So yes, she clearly has done a better job than him. And yes, fair disclosure, a woman did write the story.
That's all that we have for this special edition of news. It's time for a short commercial break. News and updates continue on the other side of this break. Stay with us here on India Today.
Hi everyone, Preeti Chaudhary here. Hope you like this video. For latest news and analysis, like and subscribe to the India Today YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching.